way anyone else not able to come now can watch it after, and you can feel free to send this to other folks in your team or throughout the orgs that feel like this would be helpful as well. But we wanted to share two things with you today. I will share my screen so we can take a look at what we've got going on. Okay, we wanted to share both what we're working on with the city of Boston and their new climate action plan. This is basically going to take all of their planning documents, the climate resilience planning documents that they've done at a either a theme or a neighborhood level, and put it into a 26 to 2030 basically implementation document for really kind of neighborhood and community-led strategies for climate resilience. And then wanted to spend the majority of our time on the report that I had sent out on Monday that we have been working on over the past few months, an open space and resilience analysis that will take a lot of the same themes that come out of the City of Boston reports, but adding in our own analysis of Longwood, making sure that we account for all of the nuances of our district within the realm of open space and all of those kind of shared community areas that we all use, but that also impact us collectively as a district. Would love your feedback on that if anybody had a chance to read that over. Otherwise, I'll do a kind of an abbreviated presentation of that and then we'll open up for discussion. And then if anyone has updates or questions from any of your own orgs, want to make sure that we have time to keep this space for that partnership and that networking opportunity for anyone here as well.
And Abby, I'll just add, you guys have received a very early draft of this, so this is not, these past 4 days are not the only opportunity, nor is the meeting today. So take time to marinate on it, and this will be an ongoing effort. We are trying to publish something by June 30th, which is the end of our fiscal year. So if it's possible to get us comments over the next few weeks, that would be great.
Great. So to start with the climate action plan, I had sent over probably a month ago at this point some resources that the city is trying to kind of move pretty quickly on with putting this together. The goal with this is really to make it like an all-of-government community-wide implementation plan focused on decarbonization, transportation, to address urban heat, coastal flooding, and severe precipitation with that, kind of frontline community focus. So they're doing a lot of outreach, a lot of engagement work. And so we are partnering with the city in a couple of different ways. We are working with them kind of as this outreach type of partner to make sure that Longwood voices are heard. So I sent out a survey that's part of this, as well as a tabling worksheet that we will see again later on. So I'll bring a little bit more light to that. But the community partnership initiative is kind of the main one so far that's been kind of up and running. The city project team is really relying on community-based organizations, nonprofits like us to be able to engage with the community. So they are looking for these kind of low effort, low hanging fruit activities and exercises to understand like lived experiences of those in each neighborhood and how climate change is impacting everyone day to day, what people care about when it comes to resilience, clean energy, transportation, and community well-being. So they're going to have kind of 2 rounds of feedback. One just ended. That was their first kind of April, May feedback. And then they'll have another one in July. And so kind of throughout this, we'll be working with them, understanding kind of what pieces of information they are looking for. But we'll expect to kind of bring you all in a little bit more since we have a little bit more kind of time to prep for that July one. But we kind of took the opportunity with the timing that we had to kind of capitalize on our regularly scheduled events and platforms that we have at our disposal to kind of integrate this climate action into stuff that's already going on. So it timed up nicely with sustainability kind of Earth Month in April. So we had what was originally like a TMA focused tabling event for Earth Day at Harvard, but we're able to integrate the tabling worksheet to kind of give people an opportunity to share their thoughts about how climate change and resilience is impacting them in the district. And then we're also able to share out the QR code and link to the survey on social media and the newsletter as well. And so throughout the next couple of months, you all have, great forums as sustainability leads to, within your own institutions, programming efforts, whatever forums you have, other sustainability meetings within your own orgs, keep relaying feedback to us. We'll be able to kind of work with the city to make sure that what's felt in our community is directly translated into that climate action plan. The other way that we are starting to partner with the city on this is defining success metrics for the plan and ensuring that the objectives and success that they're defining is actually feasible to implement between the city and these delivery or implementation partners, which we are one of at Longwood Collective. So they're kind of looking at OKRs in this like matrix that's shown here. So people, buildings, and the public realm, and then looking at projects that they can get done very quickly between now and 2030, and then longer term strategies for beyond 2030 as well. So this is kind of a newer step in this, but want to make sure that like all of the work that we all know is happening in the district and the open space analysis that we've been working on can help, show the impact that we can have in Longwood and the insights that can be kind of taken across the rest of the city. So we're going to be working with them quite closely on how we can, work together on these shared goals to get them implemented quicker for Longwood throughout. Any questions on that? More so information sharing so far. You will definitely be hearing more about this throughout the summer and hoping to have one of the project leads come talk to us as potentially a Q3 tech talk as this project gets, further along in the planning.
Abby, would it be helpful for us to share a link to the survey with in our newsletters and things like that?
Would definitely be helpful. So the first round for that survey just ended May 11th. So they have what they need for this first round, but we'll be reaching back out again when they do like the second round of feedback, just so you all kind of have it in the back of your minds, which they're scheduled for July. So there will likely be more outreach or an updated survey with more specific questions. But that said, if you have, I know, so you run quite an in-depth sustainability kind of programming within Harvard. If feedback comes up in any of your own events, please share that with us and we'll be able to relay that to the city as well.
I think, Abby, if I may, so, you guys may experience this. The challenge for us always as a district is the city's programs are very oriented towards residents, which is totally understandable. But, we have 130,000 visitors a day, employees here that aren't plugged into these city, outreach efforts. So anything we can do together to give the city feedback on the district is really, really valuable. So I know you all know that, but it's kind of the challenge that we sometimes have dealing with the city. We don't have a great platform inherently, especially when it comes to these programs where they focus mostly on councillors and their residents and constituents. So yeah, anything you can do to help is valuable.
I think the city is recognizing more and more the unique space that we are in here too. So they're quite eager for how to best kind of engage with us, and how to make sure that what strategies they're working on make sense. Um, they know that like Longwood they've already like labeled Longwood as a priority area for meeting tree canopy. So we're on their radar. It's just a matter of the nuances of getting programs and work off the ground here. Great. Okay. So now I want to switch gears into the open space and resilience analysis. So related in general, but I'll go through kind of some of the main key slides that I had highlighted in the email on Monday, the scope, the matrix, and our recommendations, but would love for you to interrupt me at any time. I want this to be a discussion where we can share questions, ideas, any feedback that you have in this. You all are really the kind of main stakeholders in the district for climate action. So want to bring this to you in an early state to make sure that this is something that we're aligned on and is going to be successful here in the future.
Abby, before you
Yes.
start, can you just explain who the target audience is for these slides?
Yes, this is going to be to serve a number of purposes. So the goal with this is that we can use it to build alignment and consensus with local partners. So you all and other Longwood groups. This can go to city agencies as we talk about the importance of programs happening in Longwood. We can use it for supporting grant applications to get funding to help get a lot of these projects off the ground a little bit more. Hoping to be able to use this for conferences or other external meetings and forums where we can share the good work that's being done and our insights for next steps.
I mean, it's a way of, or Abby nailed it there, but it's a way for us to organize sort of the many disparate things that you need to do in a dense district like ours. There's no sort of one fix for flooding and heat and climate challenges. So we felt like we've never really done a good job of telling the story of what is done in the district, and to corral some of those current initiatives and then give us a platform to be able to look ahead and see what we could do in the future. And so it is a broad audience ultimately, hopefully, and something that we could bring to the city and say, hey, look, we're thinking about this. Can we collaborate on projects like the bioswale, like other things, like more intensive urban reforestation efforts, whatever it might be, flood mitigation?
Great. So we're kind of doing this one now because we haven't been able to much in the past, but two, the timing is appropriate based on kind of the momentum that we're seeing in the city after all of Climate Ready Boston, the Office of Climate Resilience opening last year, Boston Water and Sewer updating their stormwater programming. So being able to kind of build off of that and develop a strategy to drive some of that change in this area. And then I think another thing that's pretty unique about this is the scope that we're looking at. So it's kind of combining an open space plan and a climate resilience plan. So our scope is really all of, I'll kind of go right into it. Our scope is really all of those spaces that are not building footprints or roads. Roads will long-term be a part of this. They are like ground level impervious, like heat absorbing surfaces. But all of those parks, plazas, lawns, sidewalks, amenity zones, landscaped edges, circulation, all of the hardscape and softscape areas that you see in here. And the thought here is that these are all places that impact all of our institutions. They impact our community. collectively. And so we wanted to make sure that these spaces are beneficial and resilient for the district as a whole. So this is kind of the matrix, kind of ultimate end product of our whole analysis here. We've broken it up into kind of two identical sets of projects, where this slide is kind of highlighting all, or I guess a representative list of projects that are already happening in the district, that we at Longwood Collective are doing, that you all are doing, that our partners in the city are doing, that are creating resilience throughout the district as a whole. This is what will kind of, in our phase 2 of this, these inputs will go into how we will think about prioritization between their impact on kind of our 3 main themes. So
Abby, sorry, I don't want to, I
yeah.
know you have, are we going to share some of the other mapping analysis we've done with the flood and heat? Do you have?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I will hold mine. Thanks.
Yeah. So I have a few quick slides in here, and then I'll go to like the full deck that I had sent out earlier, and we can take a look at some of those actual analysis, but wanted to make sure that everybody understood the kind of end state here that we're looking at. So we got, basically 3 main themes that we're kind of addressing. So heat mitigation, flood management, and access to open space. So that's where kind of the combination is coming into play here of resilience and open space planning. Basically, these open spaces play that kind of dual role in both community livability, mental and physical health, public health benefits, as well as also kind of the key to mitigating the impacts of climate change overall. And then we came up with 5 strategies throughout the analysis. So beautification, capital projects and development, open space connectedness, green infrastructure, and the tree canopy and urban forests, that we feel like projects that fit within these 5 strategies will overall create like a comprehensive plan for achieving our vision of a resilient district and open space. So these are like the current projects that are already in flight. And then we have a similar matrix for planned or identified new projects that would eventually need to get implemented to achieve that vision. Well, so I'm going to switch over to the full open space report that I sent here. So for the actual analysis, we focused on the existing conditions as it relates to the 2 major climate risks in the district. So extreme heat and severe precipitation leading to flooding. These are identified by the city as the most, biggest risks to Longwood. So we can see kind of the struggling street trees, flooding, clogged drains, and then lots and lots of concrete, which is really comes down to emphasizing the density of the area, how close buildings come to the property line, lack of open space, lack of green space, lack of permeable surfaces that exist, creating heat exposed and flood prone areas as well. This is kind of just an overall framing of our district within the city overall, in the way that we are both an economic hub for the region and serve specifically vulnerable populations that are also environmental justice communities. So all of our patients and employees that come from environmental justice communities within Boston. So even though we've had a bunch of, or not had, but like there's a lot of risks that exist in the district due to density and kind of our existing conditions, highlighting here a lot of the work incrementally that's been going on over many years to create some green space, whether that's through our placemaking, through the 2 planned development projects that'll redevelop Jocelyn Park, and Longwood Place's new concept for open space, the dredging of the Muddy River, the bioswale that is set to start in a couple of weeks, all of the street tree maintenance that has been done over the years to help mitigate a lot of that. So there's good work that's going on, and we want to make sure that that's recognized and acknowledged, all of the effort that's happening. This is our vision, but we can read this more, but it's pretty self-explanatory in terms of wanting a holistic, kind of multifaceted view of all of these different strategies that create resilient open spaces. So whether that's the urban tree canopy, reflective roofs, bus shelters, flood management strategies throughout the district. Methodology here, I think we'll kind of talk throughout as we get into these maps, but wanted to start with our flood inundation models as we get into some of this. So this is taken from the storm surge risk map at NOAA. Just kind of key thing note here that this is storm surges. There are other events that are going to create flooding as well. That's denoted by these kind of 2 circles here. So we've done a lot of work recently kind of doing our own crowdsourcing of real flooding events that may or may not align with these models that are generally focused on more coastal flooding. So noting here that like these circles are in major hospital operations territories, and then the impact that kind of our arterials coming in from the Fenway are impacted by flooding. I think the thing to note here is that like most of the city of Boston's flood modeling is focused on coastal flooding, so we don't have the same level of data on inland flooding. But for Longwood, it's really important to us to help the city with getting that data collection, because what makes us unique within the several economic hubs in the city is the industries that exist here. So education and medicine, healthcare specifically is a lot harder to relocate operations to. So versus something like the Seaport or Back Bay, where it is relatively easy to kind of shift operations away from a potential flooding situation, the impact of economic loss is potentially a lot higher here, even if the risk is low.
Abby, I would just add that actually this is a good area for input, especially for the engineers. We would love to add circles to this map where there are localized flooding challenges. I know Lisa Hogarty at Children's had told us a few years ago, when there were heavy rainfalls, there were problems localized, and that relates to what Abby's saying about the new push is really going to be heavily on inland flooding, not coastal driven events in terms of actually getting that data. So that's an area that we're interested to hear from you all on.
We also recognize that this is like an extraordinarily dense and detailed document that we sent out on Monday, and it does take time to read through it all. So let us know if any questions come up, or take the time to absorb now, and then feedback after the fact is also very helpful. Okay. So from flooding, we move into a series of different heat maps. These are all based on City of Boston analysis zoomed into Longwood. And heat event duration, so the number of hours that during a heat event that the temperature is above 95 during the day and above 75 overnight, down by the southern part of the district by Stoneman, it ranks among the highest or the longest heat durations in the entire city. So this is kind of where we're focused on here. This is where we have kind of the most dramatic story compared to the rest of the city. And it's apparent through like all of the next couple maps, the cooling effects of the Emerald Necklace. So kind of proving our point there that that green space is really important, and working on small changes over time that will make it more comfortable for people to be in this district. Daytime temperature, so that kind of sums up everything. So daytime temperature is also very high down in the southern area and along Huntington Ave, mostly based on what we'll see later on, a lack of street trees, kind of high levels of concrete, major transportation, commuter corridors. So lots of surface parking that create super high daytime temperatures as well. The nighttime air temperature tells a really kind of interesting story too. Again, really high in the center, mostly because, again, as we are kind of a unique economic hub, we run 24/7. It's not like we have a bunch of people in during the day that all go home at night. This is quite apparent how the density is kind of trapping a lot of that heat over time, but cooling off where we're areas that are closer to the Emerald Necklace. And then the Urban Heat Island Index. This like kind of visually doesn't tell quite as strong of a story. So when we look at Boston as a whole, it's clear the kind of severity in Longwood compared to elsewhere. But similarly, we are quite a bit hotter than the coolest parts of the city, which is what this is a relative scale against, in that same kind of central to southern area of the district. So that's going to become kind of one of the main priority areas to focus our strategies on. So taking that analysis, our team within Longwood Collective has spent a substantial amount of time developing these next few maps to understand kind of the land makeup of the district, how we want to prioritize where there are existing green spaces, and how we can think about each of these land uses to prioritize different strategies moving forward. So we took that kind of initial scope map of all of the hardscape and softscapes, and we've now broken it up into pervious, impervious, and mixed areas. So overall, that open space is about 100 acres, so almost 50% of our total acreage, and then roughly half and half pervious and impervious. And so this is a cool kind of representation of where there's high concentrations of impervious surfaces and where there are higher concentrations of pervious over time. So then we've taken the pervious and impervious and dialed into each of those. So this basically looks at all of the pervious or green spaces in the district to understand basically a level of ownership or use within that. So the lighter green are generally private lawns and quads at the colleges, and then the darker green are all of the more public use or public adjacent areas. Basically, where the strategies and approaches are going to differ depending on who owns it, who manages it, where the funding is coming from. So this is telling a really cool story that like we have this great set of green spaces all along kind of the northern and eastern parts of the district, and then it gets quite dramatically less as we get further into the south, which is supported in where we're seeing the most or the highest heat impacts in the previous view. And then this one just breaks out the impervious surfaces into different types and use. And so what we're wanting to focus on here is felt impact. So again, our scope is all of these shared community open spaces. So wanting to make sure that what we're doing is effective at a large scale, but also where our people are going to feel the biggest difference. So that kind of like orange gold color pedestrian circulation. This is a lot of kind of sidewalks and other pedestrian ways that are concrete or brick without any trees or other permeable surfaces. And so even though that's a small percentage of the overall area, that's where the greatest or like the highest foot traffic is going to be, where the felt impacts of heat and flooding are going to be highest as well. We've also done our own street tree analysis. So this one is from 2022. We're going to kind of work on but showing again how our street tree kind of distribution throughout the district is on par with kind of the heat maps that the city of Boston produced as well. So in those big yellow areas, again, in that southern part down by Shattuck Street and Francis Street, where we're lacking street trees, that's where we're seeing the highest heat, longest event durations over time. And it's also giving us kind of a look at the district tree health overall and where we have other opportunities to bolster the health and vitality of our urban forest here. And then looking from more of a people perspective in the connectivity to these open spaces. So we have this incredible asset surrounding our district, the Emerald Necklace, but the main issue is that it's hard to access. The density makes it so that these two overlaid blue areas are basically a 5-minute walk shed from Boston Children's and from Brigham and Women's. So it's really showing you can't actually access this great asset quickly, and that's a key thing for our community here too. Is
not only quickly but comfortably.
Yes,
and
yeah. And these 3 circles are basically showing kind of our priority intersections. So even if you can get there physically, it's very hard to access it where it's only accessible by like social paths, cow paths that are not ADA or multimodal accessible, making it hard to then utilize that as a safe way for commuters to get to and from the district as well.
Yeah, and we picked Children's and Brigham just because between the two of them, they account for, probably well over half the employees in the district. It was a little arbitrary in that regard, but just to show, it's very urban feeling in the district, and there are barriers to getting to the open spaces.
Can I just ask, is 5 minutes kind of a standard measurement, or would it be?
It's a little arbitrary. You could do 10. I mean, I think we're a little different because the nursing shifts, they only have half-hour breaks often.
Oh, I see.
So the time is really, tight. But no, fair point, Sue.
Maybe 2 circles, like a 5-minute walk, a 10-minute walk.
Yeah. So then we kind of move from analysis into basically what do we do with all of that? So once we've had all of these kind of noting all of these priority areas where there's different land uses and types of pervious and impervious spaces, what do we do with this information? So that's where we've come up with kind of this district-wide approach, those 5 strategies that I had called out in the matrix earlier. And through these 5 strategies, we get this kind of vision of existing projects, identifying gaps, and then new projects where we either need like expansion of our current initiatives or funding and alignment kind of long term to think about to increase our resiliency throughout. And then we get to our two matrices here. So our kind of data inputs that will eventually translate into prioritization are its relative impact on heat, flood, and open space kind of connectedness or access, the implementation time frame. This is kind of a broad way of understanding both permitting, alignment, shared responsibilities, and partnerships that may need to be developed. This would be anything also in terms of like when a project would start to happen. So something like obviously the development projects happening are longer time frame, but something like a turf field replacement where that time frame work isn't super long. It's not something that would need to be done until the current turf gets to its end of its life cycle in order to not kind of replace things ahead of when they need to be, create more waste, and then actually negate the good that new product is generating because of the extra emissions and waste that have been generated before it's needed. And then I think the big thing to point out here is, we've said it, but the coordination, the collaboration that will need to happen, like none of this is possible without kind of in-depth partnerships. So our goal with this is to make sure that it's something that everyone feels good about, and that will be able to kind of take to other communities throughout. And then we've got kind of this more visual representation. This is, again, a very early draft of how we're thinking about representing this mitigation strategy plan overall, is that it's multifaceted. We've got lots of different opportunities between where kind of those main flood zones are that the city identified, where the main heat impacts are, where we're needing tree replacement throughout, and how those 5 strategies all play together. And so these are like example projects of something that should be representative of a holistic plan overall.
Abby, can I ask a question? I apologize for joining late, but what is the time frame for the plan?
Great next step. So these are case studies we have, but
okay,
perfect timing into
sorry,
yeah, into next steps and our kind of phases here. So this is all very long term. This is kind of how we would like to think about strategies. We just want to make it clear that this is a tool to help prioritize as we think about all of the things that, regardless of level of feasibility, kind of are guiding light towards a more resilient district. So from this framework, in the next year, we're going to get into more data-driven prioritization of a lot of these projects.
I mean, I would qualify that a little bit, Abby. I would say it's probably a 5 to 20 year implementation. And I think what we're going to do, Abby is right. I mean, this is pretty heavily data driven already, but I think we're going to be drilling down into an actual more detailed implementation plan. So the framework prioritization matrix Abby's shared with you is just that. It's really a framework. Are we approaching this in the right way? Are these the right buckets? Are there some substantial gaps we're missing? And then we may work with, say, a Kleinfelder or somebody over the next year or so to really have something that could be an implementation plan. That it might be more of an internal document, because as Abby alluded to, a lot of the property is private. It belongs to the institutions. So we're not really, we obviously are not seeking to propose things that the institutions couldn't do or wouldn't want to. But then there's obviously a set of public domain strategies that we have a little bit more agency over, that I think we could be more explicit about and try to get resources. I mean, Abby's been here for just a few months, but we've already found it quite easy to get like tree planting funds, for example. Like it's amazing if you just have, if you take the time, do the outreach, and you have a framework like this, there are things available. We got $100,000 to do that bioswale in the last year as well. So, I think these are very real things that we can do. We just want to go about it in a more systematic, organized way. And like for me, speaking kind of more from a personal level, we don't really have a good urban forestry kind of strategy for the district as a whole, and it's a big deal. Like we've got over 700 trees. Some are in DCR property, some are on public, BTD streets. We have some in the right of way on the E branch that are really struggling, that we're responsible for, and I'm worried about our ability to maintain those because they're just dying. The climate is so hot there that we're just putting good money after bad at this point. So again, just to give a bit more sort of context to this, I really felt like we desperately were overdue for a broader strategy like this that we could collaborate on. Sorry, long-winded answer. We've been thinking about this quite a bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't want to interrupt too much, but we did and I know Tom, you sat in on a bunch of the sessions for the institutional master plan for Wentworth.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
actually, some of those like right-of-way areas and Evans Way Park, both of those are maintained by Wentworth. So I would love to see ways for us to collaborate because there are aspects of that we're going to be touching over the next 10 years that a lot of that are kind of like just, along Parker Street or along Huntington Ave, where if we can have like we're both tackling the same issues and we like share the same
Totally.
resources and
Yeah.
like the same
Yeah.
species
Exactly.
distribution, all that kind of stuff would be fantastic.
No, that's great. So I
Exactly.
think,
Yeah.
we'd love to really drill down on that in the next phase and come up with more detailed strategies, candidly. But this gives us our sort of base platform. Like, what are our
Yep.
what are our priorities? What are our vulnerabilities?
Yeah, that's awesome. I guess like so one thing that I will throw out, and I haven't shared this with Dave Wallstrom yet, but if he's going to attend like future presentations, he is going to ask about the flood map. And so my one word of caution there is if at all possible, if we can align on what scenarios we're using for like future climate impacts, that would be really helpful because we met with Boston Water and Sewer and looked at their map because it showed 525 Huntington as like this huge red spot, like it's going to just flood. And the reality was that was an artifact of, I think, the modeling being done when that building was being constructed. It was like a hole. And also the fact that they hadn't upgraded a lot of their stormwater infrastructure. And I was just talking to Mike Bergeron about this yesterday, and that alley behind Evans Way, Tudbury used to flood all the time, but then Boston Water and Sewer went in and fixed a lot of their catch basins and things. And those issues, they haven't had those issues in many years. So just being careful, like if you're using a NOAA forecast versus like a hyper localized one and how much rainfall we're looking at, you end up with these very different scenarios. So I just want to be careful that our understanding is like coming from the same approach because otherwise it'll be like, wait, we already looked at that and we thought those spaces were going to be okay, and now it's showing that they're going to be flooded again. So just for consistency's sake would be really helpful.
100%.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's noted in here, but the need for more inland flood mapping and real occurrences of it, which is something that like we don't have a great set of data for now. We have our field engineer kind of going out periodically after very heavy rainstorms, and just manually mapping out like where there are massive kind of flood pools interrupting bike lanes in
Yep.
intersections where pedestrians then need to like either step through a foot of
Yes.
water or like have to go way out into the flow of traffic because the crosswalk is no longer usable,
Right.
to start to build that data set
Yeah,
for
and
the city of those real flooding impacts.
you could also there are some members of the Wentworth Sustainability Committee in the new climate resiliency major. The name is escaping me. It might be Chris, but their whole thing is citizen science, right? So we could have, co-op students or have them kind of create a way to crowdsource some of that information too, to just kind of help inform, like
I
whenever
would
there's a big
love,
event.
I
Yeah,
think
that
that's
would
so
be,
good, and I think that would
yeah,
be really interesting and useful first implementation plan. Like, let's really put some effort and thought behind that, and
Okay, great.
use all our communication channels. And it'd be the kind of thing Longwood Collective could absolutely set up the platform so that it's all recorded in the same place digitally.
Great.
You know,
Yeah,
and we could absolutely get students from other colleges potentially to do that as well.
awesome. Yeah, and even for the heat risks too, because that's been on my list to do like little micro scale studies of where the heat islands are.
Yeah.
So
yes, yeah, yeah. Because I
cool.
feel like, right, I mean, there's something so like detailed we can get. Boston overall is a heat island, and then zooming into Longwood, but even
Yep.
within Longwood, there's so many different little areas. And we have doing a little bit of work on transit stations and where those are based on um, the overall kind of heat hotspots throughout the district as well,
Yep.
in terms of like what opportunities do we have for cooling infrastructure as like bus stop enhancements. Where do we need to plant more trees if trees are not an option due to sidewalk size? Can we then do more
Exactly.
planters
Transit,
as we've been doing?
right. And this supports transit dependent populations, people that are standing out in the hotter concrete areas, not in air conditioning. So, we're trying to match where the people are, which is why we were sort of focused on the sidewalks as well. And I know one aspect of our we have 5 strategies. The one at the bottom, beautification, sounds very light, but when you think of the amount of utilities under the sidewalks everywhere and the difficulty of planting street trees, it's actually become a really valuable strategy because we're able to put these enormous planter pots all over the place. We've spent quite a bit of money on it and actually put street trees and things into them. And so I think, again, we have to be creative and find ways to mitigate heat and other impacts in those very urban areas.
Yeah, and to have like best practice sharing, I think will be huge, right? Like as all these different institutions touch on, they're doing a renovation or whatever, if there's like sort of a set of standards or guidelines that you've
Yeah,
learned, like we know these things survive really well, or these planters are
yeah.
really durable. Like those are the kinds of questions that the facilities folks always want to hear the answers to. So that would be helpful.
And we have Schumacher is on our annual contract right now for the whole
Mm.
district. And so they're a resource. And we have Kyle Zick, local
Oh, great.
landscape architect.
Yeah. I know him.
So again, Debbie, I think it's great to hear this stuff because I think we just haven't done as good a job as we could have done about kind of elevating this, because we've been doing some of this stuff, but we haven't developed kind of a district-wide vision for it. So
Yeah, I think it's a perfect time because like we did a very similar process for the master plan where we were looking at all the cities, urban forest plan and heat mitigation plan. And then, as soon as we tried to drill down to like a neighborhood scale or like the scale of the campus, I'm like, I don't like you zoom in and you lose all that, like it's just fuzzy. You don't
yeah,
actually know what you're looking at and what needs to happen. So
yeah, you gotta get into the weeds.
yes, very cool.
Other questions, suggestions? Again, if we go back to like our matrix of current projects and new projects, obviously we're not going to be able to capture every single thing, but our goal is that this is like representative of a holistic um, plan. Do we see any other opportunities to highlight certain things? And then guiding questions around just like, is this organized in a way that makes sense as I took you through starting out with the flood and heat maps and then moving into our analysis and prioritization spaces.
I have a few comments. I'm happy to email them too, but I think it's a great, tremendous amount of information here that's being shared, and it's very interesting, to find yourself on these maps and see, what's happening during the day and during flooding events. It makes it a lot more clear. One thing, you had mentioned earlier that often the city is looking at where residents live, and you're looking for input from where people are that are working or in businesses here. And I would just say, maybe consider a map that shows where population density is during the day for those heat events. You have the circles that show some of the medical centers and things like that, but you might just want to show like, and I'm just making this up, but maybe there's a lot more people in those areas during the day, and the residents maybe leave to go to work elsewhere. So it would sort of lend credence to why you really
That's
want
great.
the employees being there, because during the day, that's who's running all the air conditioning, that's who's there, maybe. And then I think you need an intro slide more about what the Longwood Collective is and what you all do, and sort of like what Tom was saying, like what the goals are here, and kind of just putting everything together in one spot as a resource, because you want these slides to stand alone, so that if somebody says, can you email me your slide deck, they start out right at the beginning, like, here's this organization, here's who they represent, here's the value they add, here's what they do and what they can do, just to be most impactful.
Yeah,
The other thing oh, go ahead.
No, thanks, Sue. Yeah, we're missing a statement here about who we are, and that's
your contact info and how long you've been around.
Yeah.
And then the only other general comment I have is that these slides are super dense, and I know that the ones that have the maps on them, they need to be, you've got like your map, you've got your column of information, you've got your title up at the top. Those, I don't know how you could make them look less dense. That just seems like how they have to be. But some of the other ones towards the beginning, there's just so much information on there, and the font is so tiny that it may be a little bit much for people to digest. You might want to consider spreading it out over more slides, because I see some of them, like this one's great. It's got a lot of pictures, but some of them that are mostly words, you're just kind of like, it's so much. I think more pictures and fewer words, more like bullet points and stuff, it will just be more digestible.
No, that's all. So really, really good feedback.
Yes.
I think we may end up possibly even with two versions, because this ultimately will be printed as a PDF and is intended to be a report rather than a presentation. But I still take what you say. I know we struggled with it. We had a way denser version of it that was like 40 pages.
It's like a 40-page, Word document of like all of our, which was like helpful to then like take all of that and pair it down.
I think you're absolutely right. We're gonna need a more punchy, maybe even more visual, stretched out version.
I think there's a way to do that, if like your little matrix in the lower right there, even if you had like the categories and then like an exemplar picture underneath, like you could start to make it a little bit more of an executive summary version or something for the folks that aren't gonna go through all the details necessarily.
I think that's exactly right.
Can I ask a question? Because I apologize if I missed this, but
Sure.
one other aspect of resiliency that I'm not sure is in here, and it might be, is the energy resiliency piece beyond renewables. So thinking about like redundancy and electrical capacity with all the move towards electrification, like the grid is going to be so strained, especially during like July on a peak heat, heat day or whatever. There's that element of it too, especially for like, I know the hospitals kind of have their own systems and their own generators and things, but as a community, I wonder if there's like an opportunity there to think about, microgrids or even just demand response strategies that could be shared across all the different institutions to like lessen that strain on the grid.
I totally agree. Do you guys have any ideas on how we could sort of integrate it into this format? Do you think it's worthy of its kind of own map or spread? That'd be kind of weird, right? I mean, do we identify Maytep? And I know Wentworth has its own power plant. Do you know what I mean? Do we just to
Yeah,
paint a picture,
you
maybe we
could.
do that?
Yeah, you could.
Yeah.
I I confess, you guys know this. Like I was a little leery of doing anything to do with Maytep because the relationship is tough.
Mm.
But I think there's a way we can just look at it in a very analytical, factual way because we know that exactly what you said. There's projected huge strains on the grid as it is, and
Yeah. And maybe
you,
it's like its own separate study or something, but I've been like waiting with bated breath since we did our master plan. I have contacts at Eversource and I was asking everybody I know, like, can you show me what are you planning and how does the region's grid actually look? Like at that neighborhood scale, can you accept more renewables? How much more strained is it going to be when everybody goes all electric? And they didn't have it available at that point. I know they're doing sort of their own regional modeling too, but it's I think it's going to be a huge issue just for like business continuity. So
Abby, not to drive us crazy, but it's such a big issue. I think we need a sixth strategy
sorry.
just around energy. No, I really, I mean, I
Yeah.
think I think it absolutely needs to be its own thing.
Yeah. I think my question, because I kept going back and forth with this as well, is how does it fit into the scope of this? Because it's we're kind of keeping it to basically strategies that we can implement in open spaces. So one thing that we had kind of talked about in kind of a long term, transition to other renewables is how to use rooftop space for, either solar or heat pumps, or whether that's like a green or blue roof. Um, and it is absolutely a huge part of climate resilience overall. But how it fits in with the scope that we're um, looking at
So I
here.
have a couple of ideas. One
Yeah.
is there's a really big interest in network geothermal and, recognizing that
Mm-hmm.
this area is pretty built up, but it's something that I kept putting in front of like the Wentworth folks. Now I am speaking as an individual, not on behalf of Wentworth at this point. But anytime you go to redevelop a big parcel of land or put a new project in, can you put geothermal in there and find a way to kind of connect multiple buildings to it? That would be one. Another thing that we encountered as we look at the elephant in the room of power plants is thinking about electrification and potential battery storage. There's a lot of restrictions around where you can put batteries. So is there a way to put a battery bank that, a couple of buildings could tie into at some point when that technology gets a little bit more energy dense and affordable? Things like that. And the solar piece. We've been talking to Resonant Energy. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but their whole thing is like community solar. And I think there's a great environmental justice piece of that too, where, can a portion of that electricity support neighbors in low income housing while also just kind of, helping with the climate issue in general. So I don't know if that's too tangential, but I think there's probably a paragraph or some sub strategies that we could put together under that topic.
That would be great.
Yeah.
I think we definitely need to do that.
I do recognize we are at 12:01. Don't want to keep everyone um, too far past our hour. Um, Anything quick that anyone wants to share before I let you all go? And then I'll share out the recording and take your time to continue reading through this. Would still love any feedback, ideas that you have over the next few weeks. Again, this is early. We'll be publishing some sort of kind of initial framework by June 30th, but this overall effort is going to continue quite substantially into the next fiscal year and beyond. So we'll continue to build this out with you all.
I think it's great. Great work.
Yeah, this is an awesome presentation.
It's a hard topic to tackle because it's so multifaceted. So I
Oh
think
my
this
gosh,
is great.
it's so true. We were trying to
Yeah.
size it, and it's just like,
Yeah.
where do you
Yeah.
stop?
Right.
Mhm.
All right. Well, thank you all. I will just note we're finalizing our next Tech Talk for Q2. Our Director of Transportation Planning, Karen Winger, will be talking about some decarbonization and sustainability with our overall transportation system in Longwood.
And she is literally a national expert. She was a vice president at WSP and has managed entire transit systems and stuff. So be there or be square.
It'll be recorded.
Be there and be square.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Bye.